The saddle split in the street, and every man nearby pretended not to hear. Etta Vale heard. She had a stitcher's ear. Leather speaks before it fails. The bay's shoulder bunched, the cinch groaned, and the skirt tore along a dry, rotted seam. The horse crow-hopped toward the trough. Etta stepped from the mercantile shade, caught the cheek-piece, and said, "Easy, boy," like she owned calm. The rider hit dirt. Dust rose, laughter followed. He got up red-faced and ready to swing at someone smaller than his pride. Etta didn't give him the chance. She heaved the saddle onto the trough rail. Her carpetbag held all she owned. Awl, needles, rawhide lace, beeswax, and a whetstone worn thin as a prayer. "You ain't the smith," the rider said. "I ain't," she answered, citing the seam. "But your horse doesn't care who mends, only that someone does." She threaded waxed linen and set the awl. The street watched like a show. Coins clinked somewhere, none of them hers. She punched new holes alongside the rot, tugging each stitch tight enough to sing. "Rot finds company," she said. "You stitch into it, you buy its future." She crossed the skirt with a baseball lace, burnished the knot, and laid her palm on the grain. Good work feels like a held breath that finally lets go. The rider tested the skirt and grunted. "What's the damage?" "2 bits, she said, "because pride is dear and lunch ain't free." He slapped coins into her palm. "Would have been cheaper to cuss." "Cussin' won't hold a man," she said, and handed him the saddle. The bay blinked at her as if it knew debt. From the mercantile door, a thin-shouldered man in a boiled shirt had watched with a bookkeeper's quiet. He stepped down, boots careful on the plank. "Ephraim Keene," he said. "I keep the books for Willow Creek Ranch." His eyes took in the awl scars and the tidy coil of thread. "You do that quality all the time?" "If I can touch the leather, I can make it hold," Etta said. "We're short on hands who understand tack." He glanced toward the cafe, where Stu did a man's cruel work in her belly. "I could use you on penny jobs. Headstalls, latigos, billets, maybe a rigging if you prove steady." "Glory eats poorly," she said. "Pay coin?" "Coin," Keene said. "And supper when you're there. No charity. You stitch, we settle." The street went quiet the way streets do when money changes a life. Etta weighed the coins, their thin promise, then picked up her carpetbag. The handle creaked, honest as old leather. "I'll work," she said. "I don't carry luck long, Mr. Keene, but I carry tools." "Tools will do," he answered. "You got a horse?" "Feet. It's a piece of the ranch. I'll send a wagon." He signaled the teamster. "Mose, run her to Willow Creek. Tell Mrs. Daly there's an extra plate." "I don't need—" "It comes with the job," Keene said gently. That settled dignity. The teamster jerked his chin toward the buckboard. "Climb aboard, miss." Etta set her bag on the seat and kept her hat brim low. She'd slept rough, eaten thinner than a rumor, and learned a woman's shadow could be an extra mouth if she let folks feed it. Better to trade in usefulness than softness. She looked back at the trough. The rider had mounted. He touched his brim. Respect follows competence the way water follows slope. The buckboard rattled out of town. Willow Creek Valley opened ahead, gold grass between cottonwoods. The ranch sprawled like work made visible. Corrals, a low house with a porch, sheds, and beyond them hills where spring calves were imagining trouble. You learn a man by his gear. You learn a ranch by its repairs. Mose rolled them into the yard. Men looked up without stopping. A woman on the porch wiped her hands and smiled like she'd been waiting. "You'll be Miss Vale. I'm Mrs. Daly. Come wash." Mr. Keene wired you'd staved off foolishness with 3 yards of thread. 3.5, Etta said. "Well, bless the half," Mrs. Daly said. "Supper's at 7. The tack room's yonder." She pointed to a shed that smelled of oil and horses that meant to live. Inside, Etta set her bag on the bench and took stock. Headstalls hung tired. Cinches wanted soap and sunlight. A rigging lay cracked in a way that spreads like gossip. Dry shelves, hurried hands, winters where oil was saved for pans and not for straps. That was the story. Pride keeps a spine straight when a belly's empty. Oil keeps leather honest the same way. Work first. Hunger later, so ran her law. She rolled her sleeves. "All right," she told the quiet room. "Let's earn supper. Supper waits on a man. Leather waits on no one." Etta lit the tack room lamp and made the day longer by stubbornness. She set out tired headstalls like soldiers and warmed a tin of oil on the stove ring. The first strap gave under her knife with the sigh a thing makes when it's ready to be better. She trimmed rot, skived edges thin, and stitched a keeper neat enough for a schoolmarm. She worked fast without hurrying. Soap and sunlight would salvage the cinches. A rinse of vinegar would lift sweat salt that eats leather like winter eats fences. She wrote notes on butcher paper. Wash Thursday, oil Friday, dry flat, no stove. The room shifted its smell from neglect to purpose. Mose showed in, hat in his hands. Keen says you can come eat. I eat after work, Etta said, eyes on a billet begging for a new hole. You'll find Mrs. Daly does not wait, Mose said. Supper at 7, not 7ish. Etta tied off the stitch line and set the strap aside. All right. She wiped her hands and followed him out. Men trailed in from the corrals. Inside, the long table wore honest wear. Knife scars and oil rings that said men had eaten before and would again. Mrs. Daly planted a plate in front of Etta as if feeding a plan. We don't starve talent here. I'll try to be worth the beans, Etta said. You already are, a voice said from farther down. Rangy, sun-browned, tidy without fuss. Luke Brannon. My father runs Willow Creek. I get the easy jobs. Easy jobs kick the hardest, Etta said. He smiled like he knew. Keen says you make stitches talk. They sing if you oil them, she said, and ate steadily and unashamedly. Talk ran around her. Weather, a strayed bunch, a neighbor's bull with opinions. No one asked where she'd come from. Ranch courtesy keeps its nose out of another person's larder. You working the whole string? Luke asked. Not tonight, she said. But that rigging in the corner wants attention before a horse pays for it. Show me after, Luke said. After dishes and a thank you, Etta went back to the tack room with Luke and Keen trailing. She laid the cracked rigging on the bench and tapped the swell. Dry split. See how the flesh side looks like a map of bad roads? Stitch near that and you're sowing tomorrow's failure. Luke ran a thumb along the crack. So what's the fix? New rigging, set an inch forward. This one sits back. Lets the saddle climb the withers and gall a horse by noon. She held a strap to show. I'll cut a breast collar to share the pull on hills. Shorten your offside latigo a hole. Keep the rig even. And those stirrup leathers, one stretched. That makes a man lean into bad habits, then blame the horse. Keen's ledger mind ticked. Cost? Cheaper than vet bills and lost days, Etta said. I'll use what sounds from scrap in your good half-hide for the collar. You'll get 2 years easy if the boys keep oil on it. Luke's look ran from the leather to her face and back. Do it. She chalked a pattern, cut clean, and punched holes with the steady music of work. Luke held pieces when she needed another hand and did it right. Close and careful. You carry your tools like a preacher. Carries his book, he said. They're all I ever kept, she answered. By the time the lamp made 2 shadows of every nail, the breast collar lay finished, edges slicked with gum and will. Etta rubbed a thumb over it and felt a small private satisfaction. Luke lifted it by the tug rings. Looks like it was born for work. That's the idea, Etta said. We'll try it on your bay in the morning. He hesitated, then set a little tin on the bench. Stitching wax. My mother used it for mending harness. Etta took the tin. It smelled of pine and bees and some kitchen memory that hadn't been hers in a long while. Thank you. It's not charity, he said quickly. I can't abide squeak and leather. This will keep the peace. Peace is profitable, Keen said dryly, gathering her butcher paper rules. I'll post these where boys can't pretend they never saw them. When they left her to the lamp in the quiet, Etta sat a moment with the tin in her palm. Small gift, plain meaning, respect without pity. She set the wax among her tools, banked the stove ring, and wrote one more line. Tomorrow. Breast collar trial, cinch wash, punched new billets for the roan with a twist in his stride. Outside, a coyote called once far. Inside, Etta answered with work laid ready and the room went still. Daybreak kicked the door and found Etta already standing. She had boiled the cinches at first light, soap, rinse, lay flat on the porch rail where the sun could help without cracking pride. Steam rose in clean thoughts. In the yard, the remuda shifted, heads low, waiting for men to ask things of it. Luke came with 2 tin cups and no pretenses. Try this, he said. Mrs. Daly calls it coffee. Coffee calls itself a lot of things, Etta said, warming her hands. She nodded at the breast collar on a nail. Let's see if it earns its keep. They saddled his bay. Etta set the rigging an inch forward, sighted the line from shoulder to flank, tightened the offside a hole, then checked the back cinch. Enough to breathe, not enough to lie. Luke swung up. The bay moved out, shoulders free. Feels like an honest handshake, he said, circling. Honest handshakes make long deals, she answered. Mose led up the roan with the twisty stride. He's been favoring the near side. Etta watched the walk, then the trot. Offside stirrup leather stretched a half-inch. Rider's leaning to match it, and this pad's hollow along the spine. She tapped the dip. White hair's coming if you don't mend your ways. Luke held the head. Fix? Fix is steady. She punched a new hole, cut a felt shim, and tucked it where the pad had gone thin. Right even. Oil daily this week. Salt takes more than it gives. Cowboys drifted to the rail to watch. One with a red bandana grinned. Next you'll tell us to sing Sleepy. Only if you can carry a tune, Etta said. Otherwise, let the oil do the lullaby. Keen arrived with her butcher paper signs and tacked them up eye-high. Rules, he said. Made by the person who will wear your cursing if you ignore them. Red read aloud, slow for effect. Wash Thursday. Oil Friday. Dry flat, no stove. Cutting deep there. Fire makes leather forget what it is, Etta said. Same with men. Luke took the bay to the creek slope and tried a short climb. The saddle held its truth. The breast collar bore the pull. He came down grinning. You were right about forward. Most saddles lie, she said. Horses don't. Work stacked itself and she shouldered it. By noon the tack room smelled like a promise. She threaded billets, slicked edges with gum till they shone, and set bottles with brush heads where even the laziest hand must see them. Men brought straps fine yesterday, and left with gear that would outlast excuses. Mrs. Daly appeared with bread and cheese in a kerchief. Eat before the world eats you. I keep forgetting I'm not a machine, Etta said. You're not, Mrs. Daly said. You're Flint. After the bite, the yard called again. A colty sorrel under a new man blew at the slam of a gate, sprang sideways and tangled one hind in a trailing lead. The man's foot stuck in a too long stirrup. Fear started turning smart into stupid. Etta reached them before panic hardened. She caught the free end, stepped into the colt's eye and lowered her voice. Easy, I see you. The whites thought about winter. She tipped his nose to her, took the slack and cut the trailing rope clean near the snap. 2 quick strokes. The rope fell. Danger dropped with it. She snugged the stirrup leather through 3 holes while the man still shook. Shorten or die foolish, she said level. You can be tall on the ground. Luke steadied the colt's hip, eyes meeting hers across the saddle. Not hero's gratitude, something quieter. Thanks. Thank the blade for being sharp, she said. Keen made a small note. Ordering 2 knives and a whetstone. Make it 3, Etta said. Tools walk off when fear is done. In the afternoon, she hung cinches by length and made a list of horses that pulled hard or carried odd. The list was a map. Who always asked too much of which animal where a sore would bloom if no one changed. She could see a rotation that would keep backs sound and tempers even. Not today. First earn the right to speak. Luke leaned in the doorway at dusk, dust silvered in his hair. You made the day go easier. Work does that when you do it before it's needed. She set down her awl. Tomorrow, bring me your branding ropes. I'll splice where they look back-bitten. You see everything, don't you? Only what neglect shouts, she said. Neglect has a loud mouth. Haste is costly, he half smiled. Supper in 10. Mrs. Daly counts to 10 out loud. I'll wash, Etta said, and blew out the lamp. The room held its breath the way rooms do when purpose finally fits the walls. Order beats muscle when cattle get ideas. Etta walked the yard with butcher paper and a pencil. Ground short. She made columns. Horse, mouth, back, job, rider. She watched how each horse wore the morning. Ears, eyes, a hoof set down as if arguing. Luke came up. You're counting what can't be counted. It can, she said. This bay chews a bit like it owes him money. Give him a snaffle and a busy day. The sorrel leans. Shorten the curb chain 2 links or he'll make a liar of you on a hill. That done, mule smart. Don't hand him to a show-off. Keen arrived with his ledger. You planning to change the order? I'm planning to give it one, Etta said. She lifted a rope halter, plain and honest. Rotate mounts. Keep back sound and tempers even. A tired horse makes a tired man mean. A mean man makes a string stupid. Red bandana snorted at the rail. We've been doing fine. Fine smells like sweat over rot, she said. If you like paying later, keep at it. Show us, Luke said. Folding his arms not to argue but to listen. She set 3 horses. The bay for Luke, the dun for Mose, and the roan with new billets for Red. She adjusted the roan's pad, tucked a felt shim, and set the rigging forward. Ride even if it kills your habits, she told Red. If you lean, the horse will tell on you. They worked a short gathering along the east fence. The bay climbed a wash clean with the breast collar sharing the pull. The dun quit thinking about tricks when Mose rode him square. The roan's stride evened as if relief had a rhythm. By noon, skepticism had bled into interest. Back in the yard, Etta drew a week on the tack room door with chalk Mrs. Daly lent her. Names stood like a little army: Luke, Bay, Joker, Sorrel, Mose, Dun, Pete, Rat, Red, Roan, Gray, Brindle. She penciled rest days, keen-eyed the board. If I adopt this, I adopt you with it. You already hired me, she said. Hiring ain't adopting, he answered. This says we trust your say-so. Trust the horses, Etta said. I'm just translating. Luke tapped Tuesday. You put me on Joker for the creek trail. He hates water. He hates cold lies, she said. He'll go if the tack doesn't argue. Take him now and end the debate. Another hand led a sore-backed brown, hair white where a pad had gnawed. Can you fix ugly? I can cover it while it heals, Etta said, cutting a relief channel in a wool pad so pressure slipped past the wound. Ride kind or write the same story again? At dinner, Mrs. Daly set down a tin of willow bark. For hands that think they're iron until they aren't, I'll put it with the wax, Etta said, after she and Luke hauled ropes onto the porch rail. She spliced one where it had been back-bitten and whistled at another. You pull like God owes you speed, she said. Sometimes he does, Luke said. Roundup listens to rivers, she answered, glancing toward cottonwoods where water talked under its breath. The creek had thickened, brown as tea. Luke turned the wax tin in his fingers. You draw order the way some folks draw pictures. Order doesn't spill, she said. Spill kills. You got a mount you call yours? I got feet, she said. He vanished into the barn and came back leading a small buckskin mare with the look of sense. Borrow, not gift, he said quickly, reading her pride. She's steady and doesn't invent trouble. Name's Willow. Etta laid a palm on the mare's neck. Warm Muscle answered. I don't name what I can't keep. She's already named, Luke said. Ride her anyway. So she did, bareback to the creek and back, testing trust. Willow walked in daylight, spent no time on drama. Etta slid off with the rare sense that something fit without being hammered into shape. By evening, the board was chalked white on the door, and men were talking in the future tense. Red glanced at his name with the gray for Friday and shrugged in acceptance. Keen shut his ledger with a sound like a gavel. All right. We'll run it your way for a week. Run it the way the horses asked, Etta said. They're the ones doing the miles. Under the last light, the cottonwoods lifted their leaves to a wind that had changed its mind. The creek threw a shoulder against its banks, nothing wild yet, just a warning. Etta smelled wet earth and iron from upriver and studied the down valley bridge. Old timbers gray as an old man's eyebrow. Sag showing where flood years had talked. Order holds, she said, almost a prayer, so long as the river lets it. The river started talking plain, and even the stubborn heard it. Etta felt the change in her teeth before the sound reached her ears. Water came thick and brown, rolling fence posts and a dead cottonwood that knocked the upstream bend like a battering ram. The bridge down valley groaned. Branding day had neighbors in the yard. Teams, kids underfoot, coffee boiling black as a grudge. Keen's chalkboard on the tack room door held the week like a promise. Luke rode in from the east pasture with dust on his shoulders and rain on his hat brim. Upstream spilling, he said. Snowmelt came early. Ranch takes what the mountains decide, Mrs. Daly said. Etta went to the bridge with Luke. The timbers shivered under feet that had never noticed them before. She watched the boil and counted beats between big limbs. We've got hours, not days, she said. Half the herd's across, Luke said. Pairs on the flats. If the bridge goes, we'll be two outfits yelling at the same storm. Then we stop yelling, Etta said. We plan. Back in the yard, talk paused. Etta squatted and drew the valley in dust with a stick. House, corrals, the bend, the old wagon ford. Here, she said. Shallowest, even full. Bottoms rock, not silt. Red bandana coughed in skepticism. That ford's a story old men tell. Old men tell the parts that kept them alive, Etta said. We'll stake willow poles, men at each to turn leaders if they hunt deep. Breast collars on everything are pulling. Back cinches honest. Pad shims where the swaybacks lie. Drag riders cut ropes quickly if they tangle. Nobody ties hard and fast, Keen nodded once. Who sets the line? I will, Etta said. Luke takes the point in. Moe's rides drag. Red, you stick at the third pole and make your bad habits useful. Red opened his mouth, then shut it when Luke said, "Do as she says." Etta raised her voice for the neighbors. "This ain't hero work, it's tidy work. Water punishes drama." Mrs. Daly passed bacon biscuits like orders. Men saddled with a new care. Billets checked, latigos even, not simple enough to undo with cold fingers. Etta handed Luke the breast collar she'd made and added a second rawhide keeper. "Water will pull your rig crooked. This will argue back." "You sure about the ford?" he asked low. "I'm sure about rock," she said. "Water forgets. Rock remembers." Keen tapped the dust map. "All right." Etta's line stands. Luke's eyes found Etta's and held. "I trust your call." She felt it like a hand, and it frightened her more than water. "Don't say it where the river can hear," she said and walked away. They cut willow poles green and springy. Mose and Red waited out to plant the first two, water snatching at their legs but letting them set. Etta took Willow the buckskin and rode the line, marking the lean between poles, learning the push. She came back soaked to the thigh and practical. Current noses hardest at the second pole. Hold there and the rest follows. Clouds stampeded low. Beyond the flats, cows bawled for calves and calves answered with wills. Keen counted men. "We'll do the pairs nearest first before the river thinks we're a suggestion." Luke swung up, made the kind of signal men love. A hat lifted, a circle cut in the air. The string moved toward the ford in a V of dust and intention. At the edge, the first cow balked at the new sound the water made when it remembered winter. Etta rode up on Willow knee to knee with Luke. She put her hand to the cow's neck the way she'd laid it on tired leather. "It holds," she told the animal as if truth could be handed over. The cow stepped, found a rock, and went. Calf followed with a leap that earned a cheer. "Next pole," Mose yelled, and Red surprisingly did not argue, only set his rope to turn a steer that believed in drowning more than in advice. A log lunged. Luke set his bay against it like a door. The breast collar held. He grinned, a quick, reckless thing. And Etta hated the piece of her that liked reckless when it meant skill. They ran pairs until the sky bruised and the river swelled enough to lift questions. The bridge groaned, longer, a tired man's sigh. Etta looked at it once and then refused to look. "Don't talk to quitters," she muttered. Talk to the day. By sundown, they'd moved what could be trusted. The rest would be tomorrow's fight. Etta stood in the last light with water drying on her skirts and the willow poles like thin soldiers. Public day done, near confession dodged, the river still talking. Hours, she had said. They were spending them fast. The bridge quit at midnight and it did not warn twice. Etta woke to a sound like a barn door tearing off God's hinge. She was at the porch rail before her boots found laces. Moonlight made the creak a strip of hammered tin. Then the far span sagged and went, timbers rolling like dice in a bad man's hand. The crash came late and left a quiet that felt like a threat. Luke ran up half-dressed. Mose had a lantern. Keen counted men as if numbers could float. "It's gone," Luke said. "It was leaving all day," Etta answered. "Who's across?" "Jesse, 2 boys, 40 pair," Keen said. "Camped on the flats. The ford's our only talk now." Etta walked to the bank where willow poles stood. Water shoved at them. She measured. "She's higher. We move upstream 3 poles and catch the slower push. Cut longer leaders. No tying hard and fast." Luke took the plan like a map. "Can we signal, Jesse?" "Lantern code," Keen said. 2 long means wait. 3 short means come. Mrs. Daly brought coats. "Dry socks in your pockets." In the tack room, Etta rolled extra latigos, grabbed breast collars, and stuffed felt shims into a sack. Her fingers brushed the wax tin Luke had given her. It seemed to stick to her palm. Outside, men were setting new poles where she pointed. He tied a timber hitch like a man trying harder. "Upstream 3, Etta said, and they heaved. The current shouldered them, then gave a little back, as if even water understood a plain argument. Lanterns winked on the far bank. Jesse was awake. Etta sent the wait signal. The return blink was steady. Luke came close. "If it keeps rising, the ford will lie." "Then we make it tell the truth," she said. Rig a V of riders' noses to current. A man at each pole to turn quit into forward. Breast collars on everything. Back cinches honest. Keen tapped his pencil on the lantern handle. "I'll count in and out. You count men," Etta said. "I'll count horses." Wind wet the air. Etta set her hat hard. Mose leaned on the second pole. "This one's wanting." "It wants friends," Etta said. "Stake a 4th below it and lash them." Don't ask one thing to hold more than it was born for. A deep knocking rose under the splash. A cottonwood with its root ball turned into sight and drove at the old bridge pilings left like crooked teeth. It struck. The last of the middle span gave up being useful and swung dangerously close to their line. Push it off, Etta said. If it snags, it'll rake us clean. Lucan read through ropes not to hold but to nudge, hips low against the pull. The bay braced, the breast collar bit true. Willow under Etta planted like she had planted before. Together they turned the log a hair and let the current do the rest. Good, she said. Keen's lantern lettered the night again. Jessie's reply was plain. Calves getting cold, Keen translated. Men too. Tell him 3 short soon, Etta said. First bunch at gray light. Not in full dark. Water hides its lies too well. Waiting work followed, the kind that frays patience, checking knots, oiling a dry strap, rewriting a list so the mind doesn't invent fear. Mrs. Daly poured coffee strong enough to feel like a plan. Luke sat on the step near. Etta, you make me wish I'd listened harder when my mother mended things. Mending is arguing with failure, Etta said. You learn it or bury it. He looked at the Ford, then at her carpet bag. You're thinking of crossing tonight. She was. Jessie had boys over there, young enough to mistake pride for heat. Their rigging was older than sense. She could fix the little things that turn into big funerals, but the river would take her tools same as it would take a man. A stitcher without tools is a story that ends quickly. I'm thinking, she said. Don't, he said too quickly. Don't do it for later, she answered. Now is for looking. The river shoved and talked. The poles creaked like old men getting up anyway. Lantern light wrote slow circles on water that did not care. She listened. The river answered with teeth and teeth alone for the night. Etta set her hand on the wax tin and felt how small it was against that big moving trouble. Still, small things decide days. She closed her fingers around it and stood. We see gray, she told Keen. Then we send them the word. And if the sky forgets gray and goes straight to black? Keen asked. Then we make our own morning, she said, and no one laughed because it wasn't a joke. Night doesn't bargain. It takes collateral and calls it weather. Etta chose what to spend. She spread her carpet bag on the bench and rubbed wax into the seams until the canvas shed shine. Needles in a felt book, awls in oiled cloth, thread spools nested. She tied the bag high against her hip. If River Teeth wanted it, they'd have to bite through her. Luke watched from the doorway. Say you'll wait for Gray. I'll wait for the kind that shows up, she said. Jessie's boys are over there with gear older than their nerves. If a Latigo parts, the river gets a calf for free. I'll go, he said. You'll stay, she said. Your bay knows your head. My mare knows mine. Keen came with a coil of rope. You aim to set a line? No tying hard and fast, Etta said. But I'll snake a lead from the first pole to camp if I can find purchase. A line you can drop is still a line you can lean on. Mrs. Daly set a tin of lard and a sack of biscuits on the bench. For hands and sinners. They'll eat, Etta said, tucking them into a second sack that would float if honest. At the bank, willow poles muttered. Water had climbed a hand since midnight. Etta swung onto Willow bareback, settled a hackamore she trusted more than a bit when mouths were cold. Plant us where rock remembers, she told the mare. Luke gave the rope on her horn a half-turn around the first pole. Nothing that wouldn't let go when asked. If you shout drop, I drop. If I shout, you'll hear it, she said, and eased Willow into the current at a fairy angle. Nose to push, shoulders squared, hooves testing like readers of bad news. Cold slapped. A log nose down. Etta lifted the mare astride and felt the shove run under them like a lie sliding off truth. They made the first eddy, small as a held breath. Luke stood with the rope ready, his face a white thought in lantern light. Go, he mouthed. She went. Mid-channel, the bag hit hard water, bobbed, then snagged on a limb. The jerk spun her. Etta felt the pull go from helpful to hungry. She cut the bag free with 2 strokes that cost a week of careful sharpening. Take the leather, not the life, she told the river, and Willow shouldered into the slant she asked for. They slid, bumped gravel, and stood shivering on the far bar with breath like steam. Jessie came with his boys, lantern making fear look older. Thought you'd wait for light. I brought light, Etta said, lifting the lantern Luke had shoved at her. And biscuits and rope. Where's your worst gear? The answer was everywhere. Latigos cracked like pie crust. Mousebit breast strap. Stretched stirrup leathers. A pad thin as a secret. She set the boys to boiling water, made a windbreak from her slicker and 2 bedrolls, and started triage. No tying hard and fast, she kept saying, until the river and the boys both seemed to hear it. She repunched billets, cut a felt wedge for a swayback, and spliced a rope while fingers ached from cold. She fed each horse a handful of calm with her palm, found the white-eyed ones, and spoke longer. Jessie watched. You left your tools to the current. I left the bag, she said. The tools that matter are in my hands. The boys ate without being told. Etta put them to work oiling what could still remember it had been alive. Little circles, she said. Convince a stubborn friend. Across the water, Luke's lantern moved, a pulse steady as a heart. Etta lifted theirs to answer. It felt like talking without foolish words. Gray's coming, Jessie said. Gray's a rumor, Etta said. We'll act like it's true and shame it into showing up. She laid out the order in pebbles and stick lines. Pairs first that listen, breakers last. Men at the new 2nd and 4th poles. Drop coils ready, knives sharp. Nobody a hero, everybody tidy. The boys nodded solemnly as if she'd told them how to live to be men. Luke called across, voice riding the water. You all right? Working, she answered, and held the lantern high so he could read the word. They waited to do, which is the only kind that counts. The river allowed a shade lighter to climb the cottonwoods and make one more decision possible. Etta checked Willow's hackamore, rubbed the mare's neck. We'll lead the first in. You do the holding. I'll do the asking. The mare bump nudged her shoulder. Ask honestly. I will, she promised, and believed it enough to fight for it when the light finally arrived. Gray broke like a promise, and the river asked for proof. Etta put Willow in the water and took the first steps like they mattered. Luke held the lead rope at the bank with a half-turn around the first willow pole, nothing that wouldn't drop if she hollered. Keen stood above, counting anyway. Jessie and his boys waited at the far bar. Pairs that listen first, Etta called. No hero work. Tidy only. They set the first cow and calf. Willow eased in at a ferry angle. Etta kept the mare's nose a hand upriver of where her feet wanted to go. The cow felt rocky and went. The calf lost nerve, pawed at water, then leaped and landed on its feet. Luke paid out slack when the current asked rude. He took it back when the mare found bottom. Red braced at the 2nd pole and turned quite forward. Next, Etta shouted, and they found a rhythm. Set, ask, turn, go. The river threw drift and doubt. Men answered with small courage. The poles held like friends. A log strafed the line and pinned a calf. The cow bawled and leaned to sink. Drop! Etta yelled, and Luke dropped. Slack flew. Red nursed the drift-down channel without pretending he'd conquered anything. Back cinches. She barked at a boy whose saddle climbed. Ride a seesaw and you'll kiss the creek. They went again. Then a man forgot every word about not tying hard and fast. He dallied twice, and the next surge ripped him and his horse sideways into a deeper push. Etta drove Willow at him, knife out before thought. Hold his head up, she told Jessie. The rope went bar tight. She cut high, 1 stroke, 2, and the loop fell off the horn like a bad habit losing its alibi. The horse scrambled and found purchase. The man vomited river and choices. She shoved the ruined rope into his hands. Tie yourself to sense, not to wood. Ma'am, he said, boy young under a man's hat. You good? Luke shouted. Working, she threw back. Gray built enough muscle to be called a day. Keen's counting turned from prayer to proof. 20 pair, he called. 25, 30. At 32, the river tried one more trick. A raft of brush rolled down and snagged the pilings, making backwash where their 2nd pole wanted to live. The current turned sly and sideways. Etta changed the picture. We it, she shouted. Point rides high. 2nd and 4th poles swing out. Give the brush a door. Argue with your share. Luke set his bay at a new angle. Mose and Red swung their poles. Jessie's boys kept calves' noses upstream. The backwash pushed. The V slid. The door opened and the brush went through, cursing. They took 5 more pairs on that new line. Etta's hands burned where rope had written its quick letters. She rubbed wax from the little tin in her coat to keep the line from eating skin. 40, Keen called. 43! Bring Jessie, Etta ordered. Then the boys. Boys first, Jessie said. and that settled something Etta respected. She put the youngest on Willow's hip so he'd see calm where his fear tried to sit. The mare shouldered the push like it was work. They crossed, and then the sky remembered rain. Water jumped a hand in minutes. The poles began to sound like old men standing. Etta looked from the river to the flats weren't going to be flats much longer. "Count," she yelled. 49 pair plus Jesse and the boys, Keen answered. "Call it 50 with strays we don't see yet. Half a herd saved before the river changed the math." Etta weighed the rest against the new rise and made the call that costs and is right. "We're done," she said. "Pull poles. Run the saved bunch up the bench. The river just told us no." Luke's face argued with wanting. Then he nodded because men who love places sometimes prove it by quitting at the right time. "You heard her?" he bellowed. "Up the bench!" They yanked poles, cut lashings, and let the ford become nobody's business. The river took the space like a thief and then, finding nothing, rolled on mean. On the bench, pairs bawled and found each other. Men sagged and counted fingers. Etta slid off Willow and let her legs remember land. Luke crossed to her with that uncareful grin. The day hadn't drowned. "You called it," he said. "I listened," she said. "Rock remembers. Water forgets. People decide." He glanced at her hand where the cut bled slowly. He tore a strip from his kerchief and wrapped it neatly. "You spend yourself like a coin you mean to get change from." "I expect change," she said, and let somebody else tie the knot. When the yelling stopped, the counting began. Men counted pairs and fingers. Women counted plates and blankets. Etta counted the quiet places where disaster had tried to hide. She walked the bench while mist lifted off the backs. A bay's withers showed a raw crescent where an old pad had lain. A calf's hock puffed from brush. Red's palm mapped rope burns he'd earned by forgetting the rule he now swore by. "Sit," she told Red, and laced his hand with a paste of lard and willow. "You dallied hard and fast. I won't again." "You won't," she agreed, wrapping neatly. "Not because I told you. Because the river did." Keen made columns at a crate table, losses and spared. Bridge gone. Pairs saved 50. Missing presumed strayed 5. One rope ruined, 2 cinches near it. One lesson, permanent. "Make it 2, Etta said, touching the bay's sore. "Order buys time. We're rich when we keep it." Luke moved among men with quiet ease. "You spent yourself," he said. "I got change," she said, lifting her bandaged hand. "Small coins spend truer." Jesse stood with his sons. "You come take supper at our fire," he told Etta. "Later," she said. "I have sore backs to apologize to." She fitted a relief pad under the bay and walked the string, shimming, tightening, loosening, saying the small words that tell a horse you see him. When the immediate stopped shouting, Keen lifted his voice. "Gather." The yard drew itself around the porch steps. He read from the ledger as if it were law. "We did not lose men. We did not lose boys. We lost timber we had no right to trust. We saved 50 pairs because we listened to Rock and to Etta Vale. This ranch will proceed under the Remuda schedule," she posted. "Wash Thursday, oil Friday, dry flat, no stove. These are wages owed to the horses." Red raised his wrapped hand. "I'll teach it to the new kid before he touches a saddle." "You'll teach by doing," Etta said. Keen shut the book. "Etta, I want you to take the string as a position, not a favor. Head of tack and remount with higher over helpers." The words settled like a post driven deep. Pride stood up in Etta. "I'll take it," she said, "on condition I keep the right to be a nuisance." "We're hiring you for that," Keen said, and laughter loosened breath that had been tight since midnight. Luke stepped off the porch and stopped 2 strides from her. "I got something separate from Keen's ledger," he said. "We can call it business if you want, but I'd rather call it what it is." Etta held still. "I want you to stay," Luke said, steady. "Not just as head of tack and remount, as my equal in the work, as the voice that argues when I need arguing, as the person who says no tying hard and fast loud enough to outshout my stupidity. I want you to lead beside me, and if you'll have me, I want you for wife. The yard is approved by going quiet." Etta looked at the string she'd wrangled into order, and at the chalkboard that had turned habits into a plan. She looked at Luke. "Good hands, good temper, willing to learn in public." "I don't marry to be kept," she said. "I'm asking you to keep," he answered. "Me the string, the sense of the place. Keep me honest. I'll do the same for you." She thought of letting her carpetbag go in the dark, of choosing leather or life and picking right. A life could be mended if the pieces were sound and the hands were. All right, she said, and the words settled the way truth does. I'll stay. I'll lead beside you. And I'll marry you, if Mrs. Daly lets me borrow her kitchen for a dress that doesn't smell like smoke and river. Mrs. Daly laughed. I got calico enough to dress a parade. Luke reached for Etta's hand and then, remembering rope burns, took it carefully. By the corral at sundown? He asked. By the corral, she said. We'll say it where the horses can hear and hold us to it. Keen tacked the rules to the tack room door with 2 nails. Red walked to the roan and patted the neck. Oh, you, he said. The horse blew, accepting payment in oil and quiet today. Work resumed because work is what holds joy steady. Etta set men to moving the saved bunch into a clean pasture. She took a brush to Willow and felt the mare lean into the scratch with that sober, grateful groan horses make when the right person finds the right itch. Back to order, Etta told the day. We've got a home to earn. Sundown kept the appointment. The corral kept the vows. They made it simple because simple holds. Mrs. Daly stood on the bottom rail with a Bible that had seen weather. Keen had his ledger closed out of respect. Men lined the fence, hats in hands. Women found places where they could see without being seen. Luke took Etta's wrapped hand like you take a rein you trust. I don't tie hard and fast, he said, voice plain. I ride with you. When the river rises, I listen. When I forget, you holler. I holler, Etta said. And I keep order so courage has somewhere to stand. When you spend yourself, I hand back change. Mrs. Daly smiled the way women smile when a house gets its keystone. That'll do, she said, and read the short verses folks lean on. Rings were rawhide plaited neatly with a hidden join Red had made under Etta's eye. Keen wrote one line afterward. Luke Brannon and Etta Vale, joined by sense and supper. The yard cheered, the kind that lands on its feet. Jesse's boys threw hats. Mose whooped. Red clapped despite the rap. Supper stretched into the blue hour. Mrs. Daly set a chair at the head of the long table and then stood behind Etta until she sat. You belong here, she said. Etta touched the chair and the little tin of wax Luke slid beside her plate. I'll keep it honest, she said. Chair and tin both. Talk turned to the bridge. Men like a plan better than cake. Keen counted the lumber they had and the nails they did not. We'll lay a footbridge quick so men can run, he said. Then raise a high span when the river's done sulking. Build true and leave room for water to forget itself, Etta said. Tomorrow the saved bunch goes to the south pasture, Luke said. The day after we walk the far fence where snow made mischief. You still willing to chalk me a schedule I can obey? It's already on the door, she said, and his grin would last. After supper, she walked the string with her brush. Vows do not oil leather, hands do. She brushed Willow and the bay and the dun until coats shone and breathing slowed. Men drifted to chores without being told. Work is the hymn after any amen that means anything. Morning. The valley woke to order like a bed made tight. Boys oiled on the right day, grumbling the useful kind. Red taught the new kid to set his stirrups honestly. Jesse's sons rode with knives where they belonged and bragged of not tying hard and fast as if they had invented the rule. Etta went to town with Luke for nails and a bolt of blue calico Mrs. Daly insisted on. The cafe cook slid Etta coffee without flinching, then looked and did not look away. Ma'am, he said, which is all a man needs to say. They passed the mercantile where Etta had first set her carpet bag down and made the day choose her. On a crate by the door a saddle waited and a boy hovered, coins hot in his palm. You could mend it, Luke said. He can learn, Etta answered. She set the awl in the boy's grip, showed wax on thread and how to punch beside rot, never into it. Good work feels like a held breath that finally lets go, she told him. By spring, the new bridge stood where the old had failed, higher by a man and braced to quit pretending. The footbridge stayed on purpose, a lesson you could walk. Calves bawled on time. The remuda moved like a story well told. Keen's ledger fattened on small profits that get you through winter. Etta's chair wore knife scars and oil rings fast, which is how a chair says it is not furniture. It is a promise kept. The wax tin lived by the salt. The ranch breathed easier because the parts remembered how they fit. Folks began to say, when anyone told the flood year, that the bridge quit and the river lied, and a leather worker with a buckskin mare told the truth loud enough to save 50 pair and a couple of boys, who were going to be men worth keeping. They said Willow Creek set a chair for her and meant it. They said Luke Brannon asked her to lead beside him and then had the sense to let her. And they said oil keeps leather honest. Vows keep people honest. Both need renewing on Fridays. That is how this small story made history here. Thanks for riding along. See you next time. If you like clean, gritty, hopeful frontier romances like Etta and Luke's, subscribe so you don't miss the next ride down the trail.